Jeannie and Nick for helping organize and the intro and everything. And yeah, welcome everyone. I think a lot of familiar names in the participant list. And I'm Matt Valiant. I'm a oh yeah, I should start my video, at least for a little bit here. I'm an account manager with Vertigis, so I look after kind of the Northwest, so kind of down to Colorado and over to Montana and up to Alaska. And yeah, I've been with the company for about 7 years now, and excited to talk to you guys today about how Geocortex can extend Web AppBuilder. So Patrick, I'm going to be talking very little. I've got some intro slides, which for a few folks on the line might have seen some stuff, and it might be a bit of a repeat. So I'll go through those quick, but then we'll get right into building workflows and reports and how they run in Web AppBuilder, and we'll have samples that we can share at the end for you as well. So. Like I said, please, we probably don't have a full 4 hours of content, so we can dive into other things. We have time for lots of questions, so please just interrupt us with questions and comments as we go. And Patrick, I'll maybe let you introduce yourself before I jump into some slides.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so hey everyone, my name's Patrick Fingler. I'm a technical sales specialist here at Vertigis, and I, like probably many of you on the line, have a GIS background. I'm a geographer and did some GIS training and stuff in school. And yeah, my role is to work with organizations leveraging Geocortex, as well as organizations that are just interested in extending Esri technology. So they might be running into limitations or looking to build more sophisticated tools. And Geocortex provides a really good method for extending Esri without having to do kind of full-blown custom development. So I'm really excited to show you some of our tools, and looking forward to the workshop today.
Awesome, thanks Patrick. So let me share my screen here. Like I said, I've got some slides. I'll try and keep these fairly light and quick here, so we can spend more time in the demo portion. And maybe Patrick, you can confirm this is coming through all right, the screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. So like Patrick said, we're going to talk about how we're attempting to transform widget development for Web AppBuilder and make that easier to extend that without having to do necessarily custom development. So just a bit of an intro for folks who don't know us. Vertigis North America is a company. We are the developers of Geocortex software. So we make web and mobile GIS frameworks that help extend the ArcGIS platform. We are an Esri Platinum partner, work exclusively with ArcGIS, and serve probably more than 1,500 customers now around the world. A bunch of them in Colorado City and County of Denver, Larimer County, Fort Collins, Pitkin County, who Mary I know is on the line, and a bunch of others. So good community down there. And yeah, we used to be Latitude Geographic, so folks might know us by that name. We went through a name change a couple years ago, but yeah, we're the developers of Geocortex. So Web AppBuilder, as most of us know, I'm sure Web AppBuilder is a viewer framework provided by Esri. So a bunch of out-of-the-box tools and widgets, great for delivering kind of purposeful applications, and generally pretty easy to kind of get up and running. Now, the only challenge is that when you run into kind of the limits of those out-of-the-box widgets and tools, it's typically custom widget development that's required to extend it to kind of meet your needs. And while there are some benefits of pure custom development, there's some drawbacks that we try to address, and we'll show you today how we try to do that and how that works. But custom development is time consuming, can be difficult to maintain. It's vulnerable to technology change. The big one here, migrating from the 3x JavaScript API, so that's what Web AppBuilder is on, to the 4x JavaScript API, so Experience Builder. Custom widgets would have to be rewritten, whereas our technology will migrate across without having to be rewritten. It's engineered to work in both the 3x and 4x JavaScript API. So custom widget development with Geocortex, some of the benefits here. So you don't have to be a programmer, as Patrick said. He's a GIS education, and he can build out some pretty sophisticated functionality without doing custom coding. Don't have to maintain that code, right? That's a big one we talked about. The flexibility of customization with custom development, but you're not doing custom development, you're using a configuration framework. And like I already mentioned, right, widgets can be migrated to the 4x JavaScript API. So tools you might build for Web AppBuilder will work in Experience Builder. They'll be able to port over. You won't be rewriting those. So when we look at where we fit, this is sort of how we look at sort of the spectrum of kind of application development. On the far left, you're going to have some out of the box tools and apps. So think, like collectors and Survey 123. And then you get into configurable apps, Web AppBuilder would be in there, solution templates, that kind of stuff. But typically, if you want to do more sophisticated stuff, like we talked about, it's kind of custom apps. So there's this development gap here, and this is what we try to fill with our configuration tools. And we try to shrink down the time that it takes to develop those sophisticated solutions. So with our workflow tool, you'll see it can be, depending on the functionality you're building, anywhere from like 2 to 5 to 10 times as fast, kind of depending on what you're doing with that tool. There's reusable activities and stuff like that. So we really try and cut down that development gap, that time. This is just sort of a look at our entire product suite. What we're gonna focus on really Geocortex workflow and reporting today. Those are the big ones for extending Web AppBuilder. But we look at our products in these two camps. And if we have time at the end, we can maybe look at web and that kind of stuff in our viewers. But we've got capabilities and viewers, and those capabilities work across our viewers naturally, but Experience Builder and Web AppBuilder as well. And then the entire suite fits and works perfectly with your ArcGIS Enterprise or ArcGIS Online. So we actually take advantage of ArcGIS's identity providers and storage and stuff to store the workflows and reports and apps. So we'll see how that works today. In terms of kind of connecting with ArcGIS, this is kind of how this works. So this looks pretty familiar, I'm sure, to most folks. You've got creators logging in, creating web maps, web scenes, consuming those into Web AppBuilder, publishing apps back into the portal or ArcGIS Online to share. This pattern is the exact same with our viewers, just publishing back Geocortex apps. And then when you get to the capabilities here that we're going to look at today, sort of similar. So you're going to create printing templates, reporting templates, workflows. Those are going to be stored as items within the ArcGIS Online or portal, and then those can be consumed by the various apps that you're using. So whether it's maybe a search workflow or an inspection workflow or a property report or whatever that might be, those can be consumed across those different viewers and hopefully enabling more folks with GIS throughout the organization. I think that's one of the big things we'll see today with workflow is not only is it that alternative to custom development, but it really helps guide folks through interactions. So what would otherwise be kind of more complex things for them to do, especially if they're non-GIS folks, it really walks them through it, and it's a step-by-step process. So workflow, this is probably where we'll spend a bulk of our time today. It is about building those custom widgets with the low-code configuration framework. One of the big things with workflow that people really like is integration with other business systems. So being able to push and pull data back and forth between, your asset management, your document management systems, BI, whatever third-party systems you might be, workflow can really kind of be a glue that brings that together. I touched on the dynamic forms a little bit. So with the logic there, it really can guide the folks through what they need to do, making it very simple, just showing them the forms fields that they need to fill out, pre-populating fields that we can, that kind of stuff. And I've also touched a bit on deployment, but 3x versus 4x JavaScript API can run across both, can run across our viewers, multiple Esri viewers. So really versatile in terms of deployment. Reporting is the other one we'll spend the most of the time on too. So this is about bringing together your data in PDF reports. So whether that's a property report, a FHWA report for the highway administration, there's really no limit of what you can do. So this is, again, it's a configuration framework, so a ton of out-of-the-box tools to build out your reports with map feature boxes, pictures, attachments, everything that you need in a report, and you can combine multiple sources of data. So, if you want to look at some non-spatial data alongside some spatial data, maybe you want to look at a related table alongside another layer, you can do all that. You can bring that data together in a single report. And this is just a few examples here. So, here's a land parcel report with the highlighted parcel and some info below. Another look at a property report with some charts there looking at land versus improvement value. We got a street view image there. This is that example. This is looking at a related inspection table for hydrants. So looking at two sources of data there. One for the environmental services. So really just highlighting that there's no limit of kind of how you can configure these. This is an irrigation and nitrogen management worksheet that we did that they used to have this editable PDF that was a pain to fill out. Now they can do it all with a dynamic form in workflow that generates a report. Here is actually the Federal Highway Administration damage inspection. So this is a formatted report based on requirements for regulatory submissions for cost estimates around damage assessment. So there's really a ton of flexibility in terms of what you can do with reporting. Now, in terms of kind of getting them in there, and I'll breeze through these and then I'm kind of done with slides here. We'll get into looking at the technology, but this is workflow, but this is a similar process in terms of kind of getting your report done and into the application. So you model your business process, you create your report template. You've got interactive forms here that we'll look at, obviously, where you can get the user inputs. Then you're going to save those workflows or those reports into ArcGIS. So they'll be in either ArcGIS Enterprise or ArcGIS Online. You add them to your app. You can see here adding to Web AppBuilder, and then you deploy it to end users. So that's probably oversimplified it a little bit, because the first two, building out the workflows and reports, take a little time, obviously. But that's kind of the process for getting them in your applications and the simplicity of it. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Patrick, who's going to be doing most of the presenting today, because he is the expert in building this stuff out and showing you how to do that. So I will let you go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, before sharing my screen, I just kind of want to do a little poll, I guess. I think at the bottom of Zoom, there's a reactions tab. So maybe just if you can give a thumbs up if you've, played around with our Geocortex workflow or Geocortex reporting products before. If you haven't, then just, no thumbs up. But if anyone, is able to, okay, so I can see Matt's got his thumbs up. But for the most part, this is all pretty brand new. Yep, everyone's saying, a few people are saying no. All right, well, that's great. We've got we've got a few hands up. Okay, great. So it's a mixed audience here. Awesome. All right, so let me share my screen. And let's do screen 2 here. Great. So what we're seeing here is just our Geocortex training. So what I'll be doing today is more of a high level kind of workshop. I'll try to give you a good feel for leveraging the tools. You'll have, sorry, excuse me 1 second. I'm just going to grab some water. Yeah, so you'll have samples as well that I put together. So that'll kind of give you a nice little kickstart to kind of hook the workflows and the reports up with your data. But if you want to learn more, after the workshop's done, we do have dedicated training courses. You can just find them on our geocortex.com webpage, and there's a variety of different courses here. The 2 or 3 that I would recommend is definitely this, developing client-side workflows course. This is going to, it's again, these courses are typically 2 days, so we'll definitely try to cover as much as we can within the 4 hours. But definitely would recommend taking this course if you want to learn more, as well as we have getting started with reporting. If you want to take a couple more advanced courses, we've got this charting course, and then we also have a little, I think this is a 1-day course on our printing product. I wasn't planning on touching on this, but if you're interested in leveraging our printing tools, I'm happy to show you that as well. It would be pretty quick and easy to show. And again, I'd like this to be dynamic. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or post something in the chat. And I'm definitely happy to take some tangents and dive a little bit deeper into something if you have a particular question. So before diving into the actual kind of how to build something, I wanted to just show a couple of examples so you can start wrapping your head around how you can use Geocortex to extend Web AppBuilder. So if we navigate to Web AppBuilder here, you can see that here we're referencing a web map from either ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. And I guess there's 3 versions of Web AppBuilder available. There is the version that ships with ArcGIS Online, and right now that is not extensible, so you can't add any custom widgets to that. However, in the next, I think, week or so, yes, probably sometime next week, we've been working with Esri to make the ArcGIS Online version of Web AppBuilder extensible, so you will be able to add our Geocortex widgets to the ArcGIS Online version, which is really, really exciting. So for the folks leveraging ArcGIS Online on the line, that's something that you can look forward to. The second version of Web AppBuilder is the one that comes with ArcGIS Enterprise. So if you've deployed ArcGIS Enterprise, this is a GIS viewer that comes and ships with ArcGIS Enterprise. That is extensible, and I can show you how you can add our widgets to that version. And then there's a third option, which is Esri's developer edition of Web AppBuilder, which is something you can install on your local machine or host on your own internal web server. And then you're actually working with the underlying widget files, and we have some downloads that you can download our widgets and plug them into the developer edition of Web AppBuilder. So what we're seeing here, I think this is our instance of the developer edition, but for the purpose of training, I'll be showing you everything with the ArcGIS Enterprise version, but there's no major differences between any of those the three platforms. All right, so here we're in Web AppBuilder. You can see we're referencing a web map. This is some utility data with a city in I think it's in Saskatoon, Canada. And Esri does have some widgets that they offer, but a lot of our organizations, almost every organization we work with has a need that they want their end users to be able to, click on a feature and then generate a report. So like, for example, if I was to click on this hydrant feature or another feature, you might want to instantly generate a report on that feature. So you can see here, I've added our reporting widget to Web AppBuilder. And when you have that reporting widget available, anytime you have a selection of features in Web AppBuilder, whether it's a pop-up or you're using like the query widget or the selection widget, you'll see a little option down here. It's this little context menu, and you'll be able to run a report on that feature. So you could then pass that feature to our reporting product, and then from within your Web AppBuilder application, your end users, it doesn't require a ton of GIS training or anything like that. They can just click on the features of interest, and then you can have as many different kinds of reports available. So if we were to click on this hydrants report, that is going to pass our hydrant feature that we've selected to our reporting product, and then it's going to generate a report. Now, that's a very common, simple example. Where we find most organizations go is that they want a little bit more of a guided user interaction. Yes, there's some widgets within Web AppBuilder that can be used for selecting those assets, but they might want to give their end users some additional options. You might want to search for your assets by ID or by buffer or by extent, or maybe it's work orders that you're searching for. So you want to find all the work orders that you've been assigned to, some more advanced, sophisticated options, and then generate a report on that output. And that's where our workflow technology nicely blends with this process. So here I just clicked on a single feature and I generated a report. This is a very basic report example here. We've got a little map and some attributes associated with it. But then I'll show you kind of the process of using a workflow to kind of generate this process. So let's you can see here at the top, right? See, there's a couple of options. So these are actual custom widgets that I've added to Web AppBuilder using our workflow product. So here we can see there's this is a search hydrants workflow. I've got a little description that the user can toggle on and off to learn a little bit more about the tool. And then I've got a very simple search process. And if my end user said, hey, it would be great if we had this other search option, this is completely configurable. So everything you're seeing here, we can manipulate and design based on our end user requests. So in this scenario, the user can search by individual hydrant ID, or they could search for several hydrants as well. If we were to search for an individual ID, you can see here, we're starting to, as I type, we'll start filtering the assets. So this is using what's called an autocomplete. And then if I, was to search by selection, let's maybe select, I don't know, these three hydrants here and click next. the map will, nicely pan and then highlight these assets. And then here we've got a little item picker where the user can, click and choose what assets they want to leverage. So here, maybe I'm interested in only generating a report on, this single hydrant here. You can see as I check it, it gets kind of presents the user with some input, letting them know that it's been checked. And then here, I can actually build a custom report. So I can define whether I want to include a map, related data, attachment. So again, if we were to kind of click on this asset, you can see here, there's some related records. Let me, service is being a little bit finicky here. There we go. So we can see some of these attributes are coming from the actual hydrant asset. Whereas we can also see there's an attachment listed there. And then we've got some related tables as well. So we've got, these are related records based on, inspections that have occurred, and then other, related tables. And I can allow the end user to actually customize and define what content they want to be available. So maybe we want just, the inspections. We're not interested in a map right now, and we want everything else. So when I click generate report, this is going to take my user input, pass that to our reporting product, and then it will generate, a report that the user can click on. And here we can see there's no map, but here we've got the blue items are going to be attributes coming from the hydrant asset. And then these kind of gray tables are the related tables. So here, these are all the inspections. This is the equipment, the, I guess, chronology of the equipment. And then here, this is an attachment associated with it. And then if we wanted to, again, maybe we're only interested in just the map and the inspections. If I was to generate a report, we're then going to change that output report based on the user's inputs. So that's kind of a nice example of just how you can further extend and enhance your Web App Builder applications by, providing your users with the ability to create their own custom reports as well. So you give them a template and then they can manipulate that as they want. Now this is a very utility focused example. I've got other examples that I'd like to show, and then I'll actually, dive under the hood, and then we can start, viewing how all of this is put together. Actually, well, let's maybe quickly show that for right now. So here we can see we've got the report, and then if we actually go back, return to start here, we can see here we've got our little search form. Where this search form gets built is with our workflow product. So I consider this a kind of a low code configuration environment. If you've done some work with like Model Builder or FME, those are kind of similar tools in the sense that the software vendors do all of the development and create these kind of building blocks that you as a GIS analyst or developer can leverage to kind of quickly string together to model some type of a business process. So here with workflow, typically we've got a very large list of activities here. So we've got activities that range from more kind of programming, conditional logic, like doing if statements, or for each loops, if you need to like loop over a collection of features, to more kind of GIS operations, like you might need to do some buffering or get your field workers locations, or query some assets based on potentially the buffer that you just generated, or maybe even running some geoprocessing tasks. The idea is our developers build these, and they ensure that they work in both Esri's 3.x JavaScript API, which Web App Builder uses, as well as Geocortex Essentials, but also Esri's 4.x JavaScript API, which ArcGIS Experience Builder, as well as our Geocortex web product leverage. And that makes it really nice and portable, so that you really just need to worry about the business process and how you want to kind of string them together to model whatever you're trying to accomplish. And again, there's a large list of activities from, routing, doing feature editing, specific activities for working with Web AppBuilder. We've got a forms builder, which I'll show, that kind of highlights how you can design those forms that the users interact with. And there is also a notion of client side as well as server side activities, which I'll get into in a little bit. And then I also wanted to mention that if you are a developer or you do have developer experience, now I don't, build what are called custom activities, but if you do have a JavaScript background or have staff that are JavaScript developers, they can build, your own custom activities to do deeper integrations and so on. One thing I'd also like to mention is we have started putting together free custom activity packs that organizations can easily subscribe to. So we've got several available. We've got one for running FME server processes that organizations can leverage, which kind of integrates with FME's REST API. We've got other activities for integrating with different asset management systems like CityWorks, Maximo, Novotics, Elements, XS. The list kind of goes on. And if you've got other third-party software that you might want to integrate with, then you don't necessarily have to use a custom activity. We do have a send web request activity as well that can easily be used to connect to those REST APIs. And then lastly, on the client side and server side activities front, we do have the notion of our SaaS environment. So where you're seeing this designer, if you navigate to apps.geocortex.com, this is where our organizations can get access to our software. So here we can see the software that we're reviewing is Geocortex Workflow and Geocortex Reporting. If you've never even played around with the tools, all you'd have to do is click launch, and that will launch our SaaS infrastructure. And then you can essentially, there it's single signed me on, but you would essentially sign in with your ArcGIS Online identity. And if you are using ArcGIS Enterprise, we can also create what's called a subdomain so that we can connect to your ArcGIS Enterprise environment as well. And then alternatively, lots of our organizations that we work with want to install these web-based designers on premise, and we have that option available as well. So we have a Geocortex community where, again, you can ask questions, you can post ideas and so on. And here we can see there's a downloads tab where organizations can download the products as well. And they do come with 60-day free trials. So you're welcome to try out the software before actually licensing it and so on. So that's kind of that's available. And then also there are some nuances. So if you were to install Geocortex Workflow on premise, you will get access to some additional activities. So here, if I go to my on-premise install, just sign in with my ArcGIS Online identity. Again, we can see that these products are very tightly integrated with ArcGIS. Here, if I search for go to info, you can see there's client workflow, which is going to show me 220 activities. I go to server workflow, there's going to be a lot less activities, but we can see that they're a little bit different. So for example, you could send an email, or you can integrate with a SQL Server database or an Oracle database. So the idea is that there's a lot more in here that you could leverage. I'm just going to exit out of that though. So let's first look at a couple of examples, and then dive into actually how to build these out. So I guess before doing that, we've got this report. So where does this report get built? That gets built using our report designer. So again, like workflow, we have a SaaS version of this, as well as an on-premise install. So you can install this on your own infrastructure, or you can, just without installing anything, access this web-based designer from our SaaS infrastructure, very similar to how you would use, ArcGIS Online. Now, the process of building and designing a report is pretty simple. There's this, when you log in, there's this kind of data sources tab. Here, I just need to sign in for a second. And this is going to list all of your data source connections. So if you're building a report for a particular, ArcGIS, resource, there's this add data source button. And when you click ArcGIS, it's going to list service URL, so you can just enter in the REST endpoint for the service that you want to generate a report on. If it is, token secured, you can also add your own token username and password as well. And then additionally, if you need to integrate and pull in data from non-spatial databases as well, we do have a SQL Server connector as well, where you can provide a data source, your catalog, your username and password, and so on, and then connect to that as well. Now, once you've added a data source connection, you'll get a list of all of the actual attributes and so on available for that particular layer. And then really you can just drag and drop those onto the design surface, or you can kind of, select a few of them together and start to build out your report that way. We then have, a variety of design tools on the left where you can, drag pictures or maps or feature attachments into the, designer interface here to build out and stylize your report. And then this particular report also has the notion of sub-reports. So if you need to create kind of a one-to-many relationships, and, in this scenario, we had to create a one-to-many relationship with our hydrant asset and the related tables. There's a sub-report element down here that you can drag, and you can build kind of a, you can pass parameters from your parent report to your sub-report to create that join. So that is also available as well. And this table can be an ArcGIS table. It could be, it doesn't have to be a table. It could be another service. It could be, a SQL Server database. Really, it just needs to have, some kind of a primary key to connect the two. And then with both the reporting and the workflow side of things, like if we go back to workflow, if you save the workflow, you're happy with it, you'll see on this info tab, it's going to then get stored back inside of your ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise as an item that you could then share with, different groups of users and so on as well. And then I guess the one thing I didn't touch on the workflow side was that forms piece. Again, I'm going to be walking through all of this kind of step by step, but here we can see there's this display form activity. And when we double click this, we can see that this is where you can actually build those forms that your end users can interact with and so on. So, you can add radio buttons, date time pickers. We've got a nice kind of new date range selector that's available with the latest release, a file picker if they need to upload attachments and so on. The list goes on, and the idea is you can kind of nicely configure these elements, and then you can, again, add conditional logic and so on to make it easier for your users to search for assets, inspect or collect new data, integrate with different environments and so on. So the list goes on. All right, so let's look at just maybe one or two more examples and then dive into the backend. So there, I just showed a really simple kind of a hydrants report. I'll show you just another example of a report. This is more similar to the one that we'd be building today. Here, most of our local government customers have some type of parcel reporting workflow where maybe they need to generate mailing labels or create like an abutters list or create some, tax parcels, workflow where it pulls in, different information from different assets and so on. So Here, I've got a very, very simple workflow that allows the end user to just search for an address. You can see here, we're using our autocomplete now. And the nice thing about workflow is you can create events and logic that fire when a user interacts with your form. So you'll see here, when I click on this address, we're going to zoom to that parcel, and then we're going to also show additional elements within this form. So if I click on this, we're going to pan the map. We're going to highlight the parcel, and then we're also going to give them the option to do a buffer around it. So again, we're always wanting to reduce the number of clicks that our end users need to accomplish to perform, some type of an action. So this is a great way to kind of streamline and simplify that process that your end users might have. So here we could, buffer this by 30 feet to find any neighboring parcels. And then here I've got them kind of selected. I haven't, made them have those kind of nice checkboxes. So here we've just provided the user with the option to kind of hover over them. And then again, click this option to generate a report. So just another different type of a style of a workflow. This one's maybe a little bit more simple, where you're, searching for some type of an asset and then generating a report. While this report's running, I just want to pause there. Any questions, feel free to chime in. I'll just be showing a couple more examples, and then we can dive into the back end on how you actually build these out. But yeah, feel free to if you do have any questions, feel free to chime in at all. All right, so here we can see this is the report that I created. So this is, looks a little bit different than the other report that I showed. I think this one was the hydrant report, where we just included the map and the inspections based on that, user selection. In this particular report here, we've got some charts showing up. So we can see these are the 5 tax parcels that I selected. And then, we're displaying a little overview chart. And then here, this is being repeated. This kind of little section that you're seeing here is being repeated for each tax parcel that we passed to the report. So we've got a parcel ID, the owner, the address information. We're dynamically creating this Google Street View image on the fly. We're highlighting it on the map, and then we've also got a QR code that's being dynamically generated. I think both of these are the same. They'll just go out to like Google Maps if you were to click on it, but it could be going to a document management system or any other kind of environment that you want. So as we scroll through here, you can see again, this is dynamically highlighting those parcels and displaying that Google Street View imagery. And then additionally, what you can do in the reports is you can create bookmarks as well to make it easier for your end users to kind of navigate between different elements. So here we can kind of, as an end user who's visualizing this report, you can have a really large report, and you can create, sectioned bookmarks to make it easier for your end users to kind of navigate to different elements. Now, what this looks like in the back end again is here, I've got another report over here. This is our kind of our tax parcel report template. And again, here looks a little bit different than the other one, but here we've added some other elements to it. We've added a chart. We've added a table that includes some of our attributes. And then here, I guess I didn't highlight this before, but this is our feature picture box control. Which you can use to tie to your ArcGIS Online web maps or ArcGIS Enterprise web maps to highlight your assets. So here we can see when I select this, if I go up to this kind of settings panel, there's this map configuration. So this is all the configuration. You can adjust the styles and colors of all of these components, but this particular tool has this option to select a web map. So here I can search for a particular web map of interest, within my content. I can find web maps that have been shared by my organization, or even search for public web maps, and I can add those to my report template. Additionally, one thing I've added is a picture box element, and this can either be an image that you just upload and embed inside of the report, or you can dynamically pass in, an image URL. as well. Now, down here is that same control, but I'm actually dynamically creating that Google Street View image on the fly in this scenario. So if we go to this expressions tab, and again, I'll be touching on this, as we kind of go through the rest of the training, we can pop open this image URL, and built into our report product, there's this expression editor where you can, build functions and concatenate, different items to dynamically, create images or URLs, or just kind of connect two attributes together. And it's very, very powerful. You can add a lot of logic in here, but here what I'm doing is I'm just going to like Google Maps, API. And then here I've got this kind of location element, which is, again, connected to their API. And then because I've got access to all of the attributes from our tax parcels layer, I can, pass those in, and it will actually construct that image dynamically, which is, really, really nice and powerful. And then it's the same process for this QR code, but here I'm actually, just going out to Google Maps, and then again adding those same particular items, so it can actually find that that feature. So if we go back to the report here, if I was to scan this QR code or open it in a new tab, it'll go to Google Maps in this scenario and highlight that. So just a very simple integration that you can easily do with just leveraging that built-in expression editor. Again, so that's kind of a one example, and then maybe I'll show an example with our custom activity packs. So a lot of organizations we work with, also license like FME, whether they're building using FME to convert data from one format to another, or potentially using FME server to kind of script the process of converting data. We always get the question, can you integrate with FME? So in this scenario, this is just a very, again, simple example, but this is showing kind of our custom activity packs for workflow that are available. So if you do have FME server, this is a common approach that our customers like to do is what's called a clip zip ship workflow. There we go, it's just running. And what this is doing is it's going out to, it's presenting a user with a form where they can extract data from the map. So here we can see, I guess these are SkyTrain lines in Vancouver. And we can, the end user can click and choose what layers that they want to download. Maybe I'm just interested in these SkyTrain stations. I want to, create a clip boundary. So I want to, download and extract all of the data within, this particular boundary. And I might want to convert that to a different coordinate system, or, a different format like AutoCAD or KML or something like that. This is stuff that FME does very well, being able to convert data from one format to another. So workflow is nice because it can provide that user interface, and to make it easier for your end users to launch these processes. But when I click submit, now FME server is processing that request. So we're integrating with their REST API, and then we're actually creating a little package that the user can then download, and it will have my data in that particular format. And if I wanted to just quickly test that, let me just return to start, and let's just re-upload this data using our little file picker. So I'll just go to my downloads tab. Let's upload that FME file and click submit. And there we can see these are the 3 points that I exported that got uploaded to the map. So again, maybe a simple example, but you could extend this further by emailing this to your yourself or a stakeholder or something like that. And that's another common scenario that we find a lot of local governments need to do. And then I guess the very last thing that I wanted to show, just looking at the time here, is being able to integrate with work order management systems. So whether you're using Maximo, Novotics, Element Success, CityWorks, some other system. Workflow is also a great way to kind of integrate with those different platforms. So in this scenario, we've got some assets on the map, and then here I can run a workflow. This is again a utility scenario. So here we'll just use hydrants where we can again search for some assets. So let's maybe select, I don't know, these 2 assets of interest. And then here, let me zoom out a little bit. I can see there's 2 hydrants that I selected. Let's maybe create a service request or a service order on this particular asset. So this, now we're using workflow to send a web request to that REST API. We're going to pull down all of the associated tasks. So all of these kind of work orders tasks are coming from that asset management system. So maybe we need to repair this hydrant. We can say a problem like the hydrant is I don't know, the hydrant's flow is too low. Enter in your contact name, phone number, and an email, and so on. And then when you click create service order, not only are we updating the ArcGIS feature and creating a service request at that location, but simultaneously we're also updating the work order management system. So here we can see now I've added a service request feature at that location. My information got passed through. And then here, if I launch this will take us to that third-party asset management system. And if we kind of scroll down through here, we can see this is my task that I just created. And again, if we go into that task, we'll see my information and notes and all that got passed through. So many of you may not have a work order management system, but might be thinking about leveraging that. This is a great way to use workflow to kind of a lot of end user or asset management systems can be pretty clunky and can be hard to use in terms of the UI. So sometimes it's a little bit easier to just have your users using one single application, interact with the forms, and then push all of that or pull that information from that asset. So they're kind of using a single application as like a single source of truth. So that's all I had for the demos today. I do want to dive into the back end. Again, I'm not too sure what plans are for breaks or not. If anyone wants to grab any water or do a bio break or anything like that, I'm totally happy to continue going here. But the next session or section will be actually how do you actually build some of the stuff that I showed you. So again, any questions, or are we wanting to take a little, short little break here before we dive into the next session? I'm quite flexible. Let's see. So is that silence? Is that saying that I should keep going, or?
I think a short break is welcome.
Yeah, sure.
Like
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yeah. Let's maybe come back around, I don't know, 8:55 or 9 or so, and dive back in and actually get under the hood a little bit more.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, hopefully people are back, but we can wait a few more minutes as well to get started. For the folks who are still here, wanted to mention that I did just post a URL in the chat. So that is, yeah, if you navigate to that URL, it should take you to kind of this page here. You should be able to access it. And these are just some resources and samples that you can, leverage, after the workshop's done. So I've provided a sample report as well as a sample workflow that we'll try to build given the time we have, but we might not complete the final finished product. So at least there you'll have a sample that you can review and leverage after the session and start connecting it to your own data sets and so on. So hopefully yeah, you'll find that useful. So maybe just wait one more minute just in case anyone else is not back, and then we'll get started at the hour mark. All right. So again, just to reiterate, if you do want to access some resources, if you look in the chat, there's a URL that I've pasted. It'll take you to this page. There's two JSON files. Those are, the first one is a report. The second one is a workflow. And then there's this little README text. Again, it's pretty simple, but for the workshop, the data that I'm using, I noticed there's a lot of folks from the city of Vancouver, Washington. So the data that we're going to be leveraging is from Clark County. So I've just put together a search parcel workflow using some tax lots and parcels from Clark County that some of those folks might be familiar with. So it'll already be kind of engineered to kind of work with that data. So I've published a web map. We've got a Web AppBuilder app. We've got a parcel URL that we're going to be working with. If you're interested in the metadata for that, it's listed down here. I'm leveraging it from Clark County's open data portal. And then here, there's some other information, specifically if you're wanting to import that report into your environment. There's, this is on the reporting side, the data source information that you'd want to leverage. And then here, these are just, additional resources. I guess one link that I missed out was our training link, but you can find that if you go to geocortex.com. And again, we can touch on some of these training or additional resources afterwards as well. So hopefully you all have access to that. That'll give you access to the the workflow and the report that we'll be looking to build today. All right, so let me just close this. All right, so here you can see this is the data set that I've decided to leverage for today. So here we can see this is Vancouver, this is Clark County, and we're going to be working with this kind of tax lots data source. If you need to get access to the REST API, there's a REST API URL there as well. For the purpose of this kind of workshop, I know this session is being recorded, just so we can cover kind of as much content as possible. I'm going to be kind of, talking and working through how I would build a workflow. I'll probably be going through it fairly fast. I'll try my best to kind of explain everything, but at least by the end, you might be able to review the recording afterwards as well. You'll have that workflow and that report as a sample, and so you can start to take it apart and understand it, after the session. If you're looking for, more guided, step-by-step full-on training, again, I'd highly recommend those 2-day training courses, which will really, nicely step you, through, it's this large PDF document that you can follow to perform a particular process. All right, so let's get started. So here, actually, I'll go to Portal. And the first things first, if you've got ArcGIS Enterprise available, that comes with Web AppBuilder. So if you were to go to like content, for example, there should be the ability here to do, create a Web AppBuilder application. Now I've already done that. So here, this is the Web AppBuilder interface for building, a web app for your end users. And typically the first thing that you would do in Web AppBuilder is you'd connect it to a web map. So again, in the README file, I've, given you a link to the web map that I've decided to use for this. It's just a simple web map referencing that tax lots layer. But here you can see I've referenced it. Now, when you go to the widget tab in Web AppBuilder, this is where you can define what tools you want to be available to your end users. So here, if I click plus, you can see Esri, has a bunch of out-of-the-box tools available. But on the right here, we can see there's also this custom tab. So this is where you would access our custom widgets and leverage those in your Web AppBuilder applications. Now, likely you're not going to see anything, or you wouldn't have a custom tab here. But if you, wanted to add the Geocortex workflow or Geocortex reporting widget to your environment, it's a pretty simple process. So all you would do is in your portal environment, you'd click Add Item, you'd click an application, and then here there's this application extension button here where it needs this URL. We do have documentation available, so all of our documentation can be found at docs.geocortex.com. So if you're looking at installing, a workflow widget, you'd click on workflow, or a reporting widget, you'd click on reporting, and so on. I've already kind of navigated there. So here we can see I'm in our documentation. There's this, one-time setup option. If you go down to prepare the workflow widgets for Web AppBuilder, it'll walk you through the different types of Web AppBuilder applications and the different steps to do so. Here, because we're using Portal or ArcGIS Enterprise, all you need to really grab is this URL here. Now, this is going to be using our SaaS environment for workflow, but if you have installed workflow on premise and you want to use that, you would be using like your own domain to get access to that file. So you would literally just need to copy that. Let's paste it in here. I'll give it a title and call this I don't know, Colorado Workshop, just so I can differentiate it between my other items here. I don't think it needs any specific tags, so I can again call this GIS, maybe GIS Colorado, and click Add Item. And then the next time you launch Web AppBuilder, you should see that listed. So if I was to create a new Web AppBuilder app, or maybe let's refresh this one here, we should see, because I've already added the workflow widget, we should see additional widget there. So if we go to the widget tab and click plus and go to custom, we can see here there's my GIS Colorado workshop widget, which is the exact same widget as this one. So you only actually need to add the widget once, share that with your, the members within your organization. No one else would need to actually add it. And then you can start, building workflows and building reports and so on to your Web AppBuilder instance. Hence why our document just documentation says one-time setup. I'm actually going to go ahead and delete that because I don't want that. Let's see, I just delete that one item. But that's just kind of how you would, create, connect to our custom widgets within Portal. So I was thinking maybe let's first start with, I guess I'll give you an overview of the samples, and then we'll dive into probably reporting first. I'd say reporting is probably the simplest, piece to kind of wrap your head around, and then we'll dive into, building a report, a workflow that can maybe connect to the report that we build. So in this app, you can see here, these are tax lot parcels. If I, again, select this option, I've added a report widget to it. And this is just the, example report that, I've put together. It's, not a complex report, should only take us, 30 or so minutes to actually put together. But here it will include, some maps, as well as some feature attribute data, as well as a URL to the, I think it's Clark County's parcel third-party system that they have. So if we open this up, again, a very basic report. We've got kind of two web maps here, one showing some base map imagery, or base map. I think this is the navigation base map, and then one showing kind of Esri's world imagery base map. We've got some attributes available. And then here I've got just a URL that will dynamically go to their, or it should go to their system. I don't know, it appears that their environment's down. So maybe that link's not working right now, but that's what it should do. So that's the report. And then on the workflow side of things, this is a sample again that you have now available. It's engineered to work with this service, and you should be able to plug in and play your other services that you might want to use. But here we can see there's 3 options. We can search by address, search by parcel ID, or we could search by buffer. So if we wanted to, for example, search by buffer, select the location on the map here, click search. It'll find, some parcels. Here we're returning some of the attribute information. And then here, if we were to click, generate a report, it will then, generate that same report, but it will include, those 9 features in that report. So those are what we're building. If we look at the actual, workflow itself, the final workflow, I supplied in the read, or in the content that I pasted in the Zoom tab, there is those 2 JSON files. So once you log in and get access to our workflow designer, all you'll need to do is go File, Import. You'll have to find that those files. Let me see if I forget if I downloaded them or not. Let's see here. And then, yeah, you should just need to import them. So like, for example, here, if I exported this guy, when you click import, you would just, find that JSON file. This would be for the workflow. If you click open, it'll then import the whole workflow into your environment. And then you can, kind of start playing around with it, modifying it. And you now have that to kind of get you up and running with the products. And it's the same process with the reporting side. I guess there's one thing to be aware of with the report, and I'll be touching on this, I guess now, is there's this kind of data sources connection. Let's just log in. So when you log into our report environment, you'll want to make sure, if you're importing the report, that you have a data source. So you would just click add data source, click ArcGIS, and give it a name and the URL. You'll want to make sure that matches this name. So GIS Colorado, and then it would be pointing to this service URL. And again, all of this is in the README document that I sent. And then you can, again, import that report and you'll have this as a nice working template. So to get started, with a reporting, I have that data source already connected, GIS Colorado, it's the service URL. Let's go ahead, I'll just close this. And you'll see when you log into reporting, you're going to see we've got 3 options available. Down here, these are reports that I've built. And then here we've got some templates available. So if you need to create mailing labels, we've got a nice mailing labels template. You can start from scratch, or I like to use this layer report wizard. So let's use this layer report wizard, and it's going to ask you to use an existing data source, or you can use a new one. So we've already added that data source, so I'll click next. And I'm going to go ahead and select my GIS Colorado data source and click next. And then this will find any layers within that map service or feature service. I'm going to go ahead and select this tax lots layer. So when I click finish, this is going to build out a very basic template. So here we can see I've got, it's added a couple of attributes and so on. And what's nice is you can actually immediately start testing, modifying, and playing around with this environment without even saving it or adding it back to Web AppBuilder or another GIS application. So you'll see here, there's this preview option. And by default, when you use the layer report wizard, this report is now configured to accept any object IDs from the layer that you pass to it. So maybe we want to pass, just for testing purposes, run this report on the first 4 features. So I'll just type in object ID 1, object ID 2, 3, and 4 and click run. Sometimes you may get a little alert, saying that you need to allow pop-ups. But here we can see we're now, already starting to visualize our report, and we can start, building it out, quite rapidly. Now, if I wanted to add this to Web AppBuilder, let's just go ahead and click File, Save As, and let's call this my, I guess I'll call this my GIS Colorado draft report or something like that. When I click Save, this is now going to store this report as an item back inside of my ArcGIS Enterprise. So if I go to the Info tab and click View, you should see that here there is a item, and I can then share this. Right now it's only shared with me, but I could share it with different members within my organization or make it public. And I'm happy with that. Now, if I wanted to add this to Web AppBuilder, let's just go back to our Web AppBuilder environment here, and let's cancel this. And let's go ahead, and here I've added the reporting widget. Again, to do so, you would just go to custom, you'd click on the reporting widget, and then it would get added to your Web AppBuilder environment. Here I will edit it. And again, you only need to have one widget available. And here we can see I've got my final parcel report. Let's add the report that I just created, and I'll search for GIS Colorado. And here, if I go back, actually, these are all of the reports, that I've been building within my ArcGIS Enterprise environment. If I search for my content, I can easily find the report that we just created. So let's click OK. I can change the name of this and call it my draft report or draft parcel report. And then sometimes you might want to have a report that can be used across all your layers. But in this scenario, I want to restrict it to just my tax or my parcels layer. So I'll click OK and select it so that you'll only see that option if you have a selection of parcels. So let's go ahead and click OK. And then now again, if I was to click on one of these, click run a report, I now have 2 options. I've got my final report, and then I've got my draft parcel report. And we can open that up, and it's not a very sexy looking report, but we can start, manipulating it and adjusting the look and feel of it. So now we have a report, running in Web AppBuilder. Let's kind of extend that, a little bit further. All right, so yeah, typically what I like to do is I'll actually delete all of this content. Just for the most part, I'll delete everything in here. Let's just delete that as well. So we kind of have a blank report, but our report is designed to run off those object IDs. And that's what's nice about the layer report, is it'll already create that kind of data source connection. Now, the report is split into a bunch of different sections. So we've got like a top margin. This would just be, I guess a 1/2 inch or something like that at the top. Same thing with the bottom. Here I've got a page header. So this will just anything you put in here will be at the top of every page. If you want something to just be at the top of the first page of the report, here you can see you can go to the right and you can add other sections to your report. So we could add a report header or something like that, and then anything you put in here will only be on the first page of the report. But I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Now, really, what's the most interesting part of the report, everything that you add, it's likely going to get added into this detail band, and this detail band is going to get repeated for every feature that you pass to the report. So let's go ahead and navigate to our kind of data sources section here on the right. And here we can see this is my GIS Colorado connection. And I'm going to expand this and get access to all my attributes. So maybe I'm interested in finding the parcel ID, which I think is actually called property ID. So I can select that. Maybe I also want to include the address, which is situs address, and maybe I want to include, I don't know, the type of the property. So maybe this property use class, and maybe the total land value or something like that. So total value. So here I'm kind of holding the control option on my keyboard, and while I select those, and then I can kind of drag those into this section here, and it will build a nice little table based on the order that I selected those items. Now you'll see here, there's this little database icon. That means that when we generate the report, it's going to replace anything in these kind of square brackets with the values that we feed of the parcels that we feed to the report. So the next step here is I might want to create a header. So here you'll see there's this handy report explorer, and this is going to outline all the different components within your report. So we've got our top margin, our page header, and then inside of our detail band, we've got a table. And then there's a table row, and then inside of a table row, there's these individual table cells. So I can select this table row, and let's just create a row just above it for our headers. So I can go into the properties of that, or I can click edit. And then here I can see there's these actions. So I'm going to create a row above. And there you can see I've created a row above. Now let's double click on this. Maybe, type in property ID, address, property type, and, property, if I can type properly, property value. So it's, we added a header to our table. Let's start changing the look and feel of this now. So I can, maybe for my headers, I might want to select a few of them, and let's adjust the appearance of them. So I can go into the appearance, and maybe I want to give it a background color of maybe like green or blue. So here, let's just, I don't know, choose a nice kind of color here. And now the background is green. To adjust the font color, I can, change the foreground color to be white. So it's a little bit easier to read. And then if I go into the font, I can also, make it bold if I wanted to as well. And we can maybe add some borders for these. And you can change the border color if you wanted to as well, and change the font name, size, etc. But I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe I want to center them as well. So you can see here, there's the text alignment option. So here, right now, they're set to top left. I might want to make it, middle center. So it's starting to look kind of snazzy. Let's do the similar thing with the bottom option. So let's just select the 4 of them here. Add maybe a little border around them and set the text alignment to middle center. So that's looking good. I'm also just going to, I think, by default, actually, no, that's looking good. Let's preview this. So again, 2, 3, 4, click preview. This is going to get repeated for each thing, so it's going to look a little bit weird. But here we can see we're now starting to, add them. Now, let's start maybe adding a map or some images and so on onto this. So let's go maybe in the page header, I'm going to add a image. So I'll drag this picture box here. And let's maybe extend this a little bit. And again, there's within the settings here, for the picture box, we can see there's an image source and an image URL. You could, enter an image URL in here, or we can do it dynamically, as I kind of showed with the Google Street View. But I'm just going to upload an image, from my desktop and embed that to the report. So let's just go to my desktop and upload some images maybe. It's in my pictures directory. Logos, okay. Let's open that. So here, I'm starting to add some branding. You would obviously, use your own or organization, but here I've uploaded an, an image. And it's starting to look kind of nice. Maybe I want to reduce my page header. And then maybe I want to give it a title. So I'll add a little text box here. Let's maybe make it also kind of middle. So I'll double click on this and maybe I'll call this my parcel report. And then if I select this, let's go and make it maybe middle left. And so it's kind of in line with this, and maybe increase the size to 20 or something like that. That's starting to look okay. And then let's add maybe a text or a line underneath here to give it a little bit of a nicer look. So I can increase the size of this line if I wanted to make it kind of nice and thick. So starting to look okay. Now, a lot of reports have you want to include the current date as well as how many pages there are. So to do that, we've got a page info option here. So I can just drag that into my top corner here. And let's move it over. So by default, it's going to be the current number of pages. But you can see here, there's this page information option. Let's set this to be the current date and time. And maybe I want to center this to the right or align it to the right. So let's go ahead and set this to be top right. So yeah, looking all right. And then lastly, maybe I want to list the number of pages as well. I'm going to put this in the bottom footer. So it just shows up at the very bottom of the page. And again, that's looking all right. Let's preview this. It's still going to look a little bit weird because right now I've got this kind of header in the detail band. So it looks a little bit weird, you might only want this to be at the top and have all of the attributes listed. That's easily doable, but once we start adding maps and so on, we might want to have each property to have this kind of nice header. And again, it's kind of dangerous. I've been making lots of these changes. I haven't even, saved my report. I've only saved it once in its initial phase. So let's go ahead and click save as well. And then lastly, let's just open up this detail band, increase the size of it a little bit, and let's add a map into here. So let's add a little feature picture box. And let's just make it the whole way. Give it a little border. And then here I can actually connect this to a web map. So let's click on this option here. Search for GIS Colorado and select, it could be either of these web maps. Let's just select this one and maybe add a little break so that we can, there'll be a break between each parcel. And let's maybe make that a dash. So starting to resemble a decent little report here. I guess the last thing I wanted to maybe do was, let's rerun that final report. Like, I know the URL for this looks to be like it's down, but at least I can show you how you would, embed a dynamic URL into a report. So I just forget what that URL is. So let's just, open this into a new tab. Oh, here, it looks like it's working. So here, this is going out to, this other system. So I'm going to copy this URL. This is Clark County's, mapping application, which a lot of this data, is likely living in like SQL Server and Oracle, like some of the assessment information and owner information. You can include that stuff in a report as well. It just requires creating, like a sub report for that information. So it's definitely possible. I couldn't do it because I don't have access to their internal environment, but definitely possible to also, include this other kind of data that's likely living in a non-spatial database. So let's go into our report and create a clickable hyperlink. So I'm going to click on this property ID table cell. And if we go to the functions tab here, or the expressions tab, we'll see there's this navigation URL property. So this is where you can define a URL that the user, when they click on it, it'll take them to that URL. So within here, I can just write a little expression. I'm going to paste in that URL here. So single quote is just going to be used to specify this as kind of like text content. And then here, it looks like there's this, qval equals, and this is the property ID. So I'm just going to delete that and make it dynamic. So here I can start to concatenate and add my other fields using a little plus. And then if I go to the fields tab, you'll see here, if we scroll down, or search, search for prop, there's this prop ID field. So if I just double click that, that'll get inserted. Alternatively, as you're building this, you can also within here, if I start just typing prop, it'll show up as well. Now this is a very simple expression. I do want to, again, just highlight, if you go to the functions tab here, you can do all sorts of different types of, functions to do, summaries, to get the counts of objects, do sums, if you need to do date time calculations to convert dates, there's a whole huge array of date time operations in here that you can kind of manipulate your data. We've got GIS operations. So if you've got coded value domains, we can retrieve those or just get the X and Y coordinates of the features that get sent through. And then there's other operations as well. In particular, a pretty powerful one is an if statement. So if you search for if, you can have some logic built into your report to say, like, if this value is greater than, X, then I want to symbolize this as red. Otherwise, I'll symbolize this as green, or show this element, and if it hits that condition, if it doesn't, we'll hide it. So that's again a very powerful function available, and our training goes into that a little bit deeper. Just going to grab a little bit of water here. 1 second. All right, so I think this is pretty much the report, that I provided in the sample. Again, I understand I went through this whole process, pretty fast. I'm pretty used to working with the tools. But again, this is recorded. You've got the sample. You can definitely play around with the tools and explore, further, connect to your own data sources. We have a single feature attachment, multi-feature attachment option. So if you do have features that your field workers are uploading photos to, you can easily include those inside of your reports as well. So yeah, let's go ahead and actually, yeah. So there, I think I forgot to build that navigation URL. So pardon me, let's build it. So now, this will be a URL that will dynamically populate the property ID. And then just to make it look like, an actual hyperlink, I'm just going to also change the color of it to make it maybe blue. Yeah, it's kind of a hyperlink color, and underline. So now let's save this and go to our Web AppBuilder application and I don't know, let's select a random feature here, run report, and let's select our draft parcel report. So let's just give that a few moments. Now, reports will take longer to generate if you have a map in them, and that's just because we have to, retrieve the geometry of the parcel and then render, the map component and embed that in the report. So that will take a little bit longer, but not that long. And so here you can see I've got a nice little feature map of my parcel. Oh, and I guess one thing worth mentioning too is here, if I go to the, you can see here we're just, the extent of this is, might be a little bit too tight. Maybe I want a nicer extent. We can go into the report, and if you select the feature picture box options, you can either hard code a scale that you always want that map to be displayed at. You can adjust the rotation of it as well. And there's also this expand control. So maybe I want to have it a little bit more zoomed out. So I'll kind of, expand it. It's like doing, a little bit of a buffer around the geometry of interest. So now if I was to, rerun that, just rerun it again, we should see that it's a little bit more zoomed out. And again, you can start to see, it's been 30 minutes and, I've been rapidly prototyping this, testing it, with my data. Obviously, when you get started with it, it's going to take a little bit longer to get going with the software. But again, our training and even, having attended this workshop, it'll help you, along the way. And here you can see, I've just kind of zoomed it out a little bit further. Using that little function. And then I guess here we've got a little property ID. If we were to click it, you can also open it in a new tab. I guess we'll zoom to this parcel in the Clark County page. So it's dynamically generating that link. And I think it'll zoom to that parcel or something like that. Or maybe it won't find it. There we go. It's just a little slow there. And that's the parcel that we just generated our report on. So again, feel free to chime in if you have any questions. Can it do this? Can it do that? Happy to, to explore further and dive a little bit deeper for sure. But that's kind of on the reporting side as far as I wanted to go. But I'm, can definitely dive a little bit deeper into that. I would like to spend the majority of the session touching on our workflow product, just because it does probably just require the most experience. Getting familiar with how the workflow product works does take some time. So just walking you through how that all works, I think will be beneficial. All right, so there we can see that I think we're pretty happy with how that report turned out. We could, again, spend longer, manipulating it and so on, but I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to go ahead and delete some of these guys over here. And now let's dive into workflow. So here you can see, we've got our workflow that I built that allows you to search for parcels. So how do we build a workflow? Where do we start? I always like to start with just, a simple hello world, and then kind of go from there. So let's kind of start there and then work our way up as we get a little bit more comfortable, seeing the tool in action. So let's go into our workflow designer, and I'm just going to close this guy, and let's create a blank new workflow. Additionally, I'll be showing this in a moment, but you can also click File New, and my session expired there. Give me a second here, and there's these templates available as well. So these are sample templates to kind of help you going, and help you get started. We'll be using a buffer sample for this, but for now, I'm just going to start with a blank workflow. So the first thing, what every workflow or most workflows has is a display form. So let's use this filter and search for, form. And you'll see right at the top here, we've got our display form activity. I can just drag this and I can put it, anywhere I want. If I hover over an activity, you'll see there's this left, upper, right, and bottom arrow. I think the default is to always go down. So wherever you go, the default should be, to go underneath it. But alternatively, if I was to, drag this, at least for the start of the workflow, it'll automatically make that selection. So here we've got this display form activity. Let's double click it. And I might want to collect some information from the user, such as their name. So let's start adjusting this form. So here we can see there's a form title. I might call this, hello world. And let's just add, a simple text box. Again, you can filter this if you search for like box or something like that. It'll show you a list. And so here we've got a text box. And then I might want to ask the user to enter their name. Please enter your name, and let's make it required, so that they won't be able to complete the form if they don't enter their name. You can add a description if you want. It's required. And additionally, if we wanted to, we can stylize this form using what's called Markdown, which essentially we've got documentation on it, but to do like bold, you can, or to do it italicized, you can just add like 2 underscores around what your text, and that'll make it italic. And then to make something bold, you can add 2 underscores around the edge. And at any point, if you're wanting to look for a reference, if you go to like our help, just click a random thing here and search for Markdown and hit enter. You can see we've got a bunch of our products here on the right, but you can filter it, go to workflow, and you can see here, there should be, I don't know, if we click, I guess so many of these have Markdown. I know we have a Markdown reference somewhere, so reference, maybe this might be in here. This wasn't a great example. Anyways, there's somewhere in our documentation which outlines, all of the different types of Markdown that you can use to, stylize your forms. I can find that, maybe in the next break and paste it in for folks. So, here we've got a form. You're asking the user for their name. We've got a little button here that says submit and cancel. If I was to save this, it's not doing anything. If I was to save this and call this, GIS Colorado draft workflow, click save. That's again getting stored back in ArcGIS Online and Portal as an item. One thing worth mentioning, kind of like reporting, you know how you can preview those reports before adding them to like Web AppBuilder. You can do something similar with workflow. So there is what we call a sandbox environment. So if you click run in sandbox, this is just going to launch, you know, an Esri kind of JavaScript sandbox where you can run these workflows in. By default, we load this kind of default web map. But if you go to settings, you can connect it to your own web map or web scene. And you can also define your environment. So if you're running this, you know, for Web AppBuilder, it would be the 3.x JavaScript API. If you're running this workflow in Experience Builder or Geocortex Web, it would, you know, you would be using the 4.x JavaScript API. But here, if we click Run Workflow, we can see, you know, nothing's happening. If I enter in my name is Patrick, nothing's going to pop up, but we've got a workflow. Now, if I wanted to add that to a Web AppBuilder, let's just go to our Web AppBuilder application and click plus. So with reporting, you only have to have the one widget, and then you're just adding your reports to it. With workflow, because it's kind of a tool that your end user uses, you'd click plus, and then you'd find your workflow widget. Here, I've got it listed here. And then here, if I, you know, you could change the icon and so on. I can choose workflow. Again, search for GIS Colorado and find my draft workflow. We'll click OK. I don't know, give it a name, parcel search or something like that. And then here we can see it's on the right. You know, maybe I'll update the icon of it too, so it looks all right, like something a little bit different. Search for some icons that I might have. There we go. Let's just upload this little image. So it looks a little bit different. So this is my, you know, parcel search workflow. Right now, it's just a hello world. And if I, again, enter in Patrick, you know, nothing's showing up. So let's maybe, you know, try to get, you know, see how you would actually retrieve whatever information that user enters into that form. So to begin, let's go to our workflow product. And you'll see here, any element that you add into the workflow, if I add this horizontal rule or whatever, you know, I added that text box, has this element ID. So this is text box 1, this is horizontal rule. Similarly, any activity that you add to workflow has an ID. So this is form 1. If I added like a buffer activity, that's going to be buffer 1. So in order for me to retrieve this text box value, I'm going to be referencing this element ID. So one activity I can use just to create like a pop-up, you know, highlighting whatever the user entered is an alert. So I'm just going to drag that on top of my form. And here it's asking for the text to include in the alert. You know, I could hard code this if I wanted to. I could call it hello world. But the whole point is we want this to be dynamic. We want this text to be whatever the user entered in this form. So to do so, I'm just going to delete this. You can see here it says type equals to start an expression. And to give you more space, you can also expand this and it'll give you a little bit more space here. So if you type equals and add a $, this is where you know, any activity that you add will be referenced in here. And as you start typing, you know, you'll start filtering the activities. So here I'm interested in my form. And if I add a period, I can see the properties of the form. So the result is, you know, did they click submit or did they click cancel? But I can go into the form if I select this state option and add a period. And then here I can see, you know, here's my footer, my header, my horizontal rule, and then here's my text box. If I click on my text box and add a period, I can see here, we've got a bunch of different properties, but I'm interested in the value, what did the user enter? So there, I've added that. I'm happy with that. There's no validation errors or anything like that. I can click OK. You can see, it's being listed here. You could give it a title as well if you wanted to, but I'm pretty happy with that. So let's just go ahead and save this and rerun this. So there, yeah. So there, when I click to cancel, nothing showed up. It's an empty alert. If I run this and enter in Patrick Fingler within here and click submit, it's Patrick Fingler. And then I think if I set I can't recall if I set it to be required. So it is required. So if I was to, click submit here, it's going to, say that it's required. So here I'm just going to say hello world. And again, when we click submit, it's now saying, hello world. So that's kind of your simple hello world workflow. It's not interacting with the map or anything like that, but we're retrieving the value from this text box and we're throwing it into an alert. Let's clean up this workflow a little bit. So first off, what's really nice is these IDs, they're okay, but as you start adding additional options within your form, you're going to probably want to change these element IDs to make it easier for you to search and identify items. So I might actually want to edit this and call this my name. Additionally, if I go into here I've got my form. I might call this my hello world form. And you'll see here in my alert, anytime you're referencing that, it's going to replace those items. So now I can, if I was to go back, it's still, I can go into the form and you'll see here now this says name instead of text box 1, which just makes it a little bit easier for me as a workflow author to, understand, what this component is. It'll tell me it's a text box, but at least I'll know it's for my name. So that's something, best practice that I would recommend as you start building workflows is to, give your element IDs and your activities, actual functional, IDs to make them easier to work with. All right, so let's go ahead and, work with a sample. So let's go File, New, and search for buffer geometry. And I'm just going to, cut. So if I hold Control and drag, I can grab all of that. You can do Control X if you wanted to, or you can just cut. And you can also paste content from one workflow to another. I'm just going to paste, because I have this already saved and wired up, I'm just going to paste that all in here. So this is a buffer sample that we have. Now, here we can see we've got a display form, which has a geometry picker, so a user can select a point on the map, enter in a distance. Here we've got a drop-down list with some options available, so it's already nicely put together for doing a buffer. And then there's some activities that run. So this is going to do a buffer. We're going to add some graphics onto the map using this kind of JSON symbol. I'll show you where all of this comes from. You don't have to write that from scratch or anything like that. And then here we can see we're adding those graphics to the map. So let's just save this first and run this again. So here we can see now I've replaced it with this buffer sample. Let's just add a point here, give it a distance, 50 feet. And if I click submit, or actually, we haven't added any logic in this workflow. So even if I click cancel, I think right now with this sample, it's still going to, add a buffer graphic on the map, which I'm not, super happy about. So let's start to, manipulate this workflow. So for starters, I always like to, again, make my IDs, consistent and make sense for my activity. So I'm going to call this my, search form for my, that allows me to search for parcels. And then inside of my form, I might want to just call this, my description. Or maybe I don't even need a description. Maybe I want to, allow the user to say, select point, select distance, or actually it probably makes more sense to just call this buffer distance, just to make it look nice. And buffer unit. Let's change this to buffer unit or buffer point, sorry. And then here I'll update these element IDs. So I might want to call this, my point as my ID, or buffer point, buffer distance, and buffer unit. You don't have to do this. This is just kind of a best practices thing. And then what's also nice is you can, add default values. So if we were to, again, rerun this, there's no default values popping up. I might want it to have a default value of 100 feet, for example. And maybe I don't want to have all of these, 3 zeros there as well. So there you can see we've created our little buffer there. So maybe I want my default value to be like 150. And then you can set the precision. So how many decimal points you want there to be. I'm going to set that to 0. And for the buffer unit here, maybe we want it to be feet. So we can see there's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items in here. With workflow, this is all under the hood. It's JavaScript. So here, there's this selected index. With programming, when you have like a list of features, some programming languages use like 1 as the first item. Some use 0 as the first item. So actually, if I wanted to make this feet be the first thing selected, I will do 0. So here we can see 0. If I wanted it to be like, miles, I would do, that would be 0, 1, 2, 3. So that would be 3 would be miles and so on. But let's just do feet here. Click save, and let's, again, rerun this. I don't have to refresh my application and anything like that. Here you can see when I ran that, we've got our default values being set, and it's starting to resemble an actual workflow. Now here it's, I guess I'll walk through how, this symbol gets added. There we just kind of used a sample, but here you can see this, there's this buffer operation that runs. I'm gonna just call this buffer as well. Here, I don't like having these leftover ones and so on, so I'll call this my buffer symbol. And you don't have to do this, but it's a nice way to kind of clean up your workflow. And I'll call this my buffer graphics, I guess. And so here, this is the buffer activity. What's happening here is there's some inputs. So a buffer activity requires some input geometry. It's getting this. Let's just delete this here. If you do search form, and we go into the form, we can see these are all of our form elements. So here I can see I've got a geometry picker, which is the point that we add onto the map. This is called buffer point. Add a period. We can see here, there's the value of it. This is I guess a geometry reference. If you add another period, you can see here, there's the geometry. Now, this is again, kind of getting into back-end, more technical stuff, but here you can see there's that little like square brackets means there can be multiple geometries. And that's because you could have like a multi-point option. So an end user could add multiple points, which would mean there'd be multiple geometries. Here we've just added a single point. So again, like that index thing that I mentioned here before, to get just the first point, which there will only ever be one point in this scenario, we were going to use 0 there. That's just some nuance with the geometry picker that you need to be aware of as you start to work with geometries. And again, the reason why there can be multiple options there is if we go into our search form, you can see here, there's this maximum geometries option. So I could, for example, ask the user to create 5 points if I wanted to on the map and then buffer all of those points. But in this scenario, I only want the user to be able to create a single point on the map and then buffer it. Hence why I have to define that it's that point. And then here, if you look at the distance, we can again, just to show you how this works, you can see this is my buffer distance form element. If I add a period, we can see there's the value of that, which is what I'm after. And then because it's a number, there's also this numeric option at the end. And that'll get the value of the distance. And then similarly for the unit, again, we'll just start from scratch here. So I'll go into my form. I'll go into the state of my form. And then here we can see there's this buffer unit drop-down list, and I want the value that the user selected. So that's, all of those inputs that the user selects here are going to get filtered and filed, into this buffer geometry activity. The output of this is going to be a geometry, which will be our actual new, buffer area, which we can then use to add some graphics on the map. Now, there we can see that buffer geometry is this kind of orange symbol that got added. We might want to change the color of that. Where this symbol gets defined is if you go to the Esri kind of JavaScript symbol playground. There's this sample playground available. And for polygons, there's the simple fill symbol option. And this is the nice wizard that allows you to kind of stylize the symbols that you want to get displayed. So here, we might want to have the style be, I'm happy with solid, but maybe we want the outline to instead be, I don't know, like a dark green. And we might want the, the outlines to be dashes, and we want the color to be also, a lighter green for our, buffered area. What this nice tool does is it'll actually create JSON for that, highlights. This is RGB and transparency. RGB and transparency. It'll nicely create this, so you don't have to. If you, I think, just click on the JSON, it'll copy it. But I also can do, Control A to select it, copy it, and then we can use that in our workflow. So if I wanted to change the color of this, I can just open this up. It's called Get Symbol from JSON. Again, there's documentation on this, but here I can replace this and paste in that JSON. And you'll see the next time we run our workflow, the color is going to be a little bit different. So if I was to save that and rerun this, we're going to have a green buffer now. So there we can see now that's green. So now let's actually, select some features, right? So what you might want to do is you might want to do a query, right? We might want to query this, all the parcels that intersect this buffer. So let's go ahead and perform a query. Actually, before doing that, let's maybe do some branching in our form. So right now, regardless if I click submit or cancel, it's going to attempt to do a buffer. And I might want to say, if the user clicks submit, they do the buffer. If they click cancel, we just exit out of the workflow. So you can see here, there's this button bar, and you can add as many buttons as you want to handle, different scenarios for your users. But we can see here, there's a label. So here, I might want to call this, instead search. And you can see there's a value here. I might, again, want this to be search. Now, the value is important because that's what we'll use to do our branching. And you can see here, the value of this is cancel. Everything in workflow is case sensitive. So that's also something to be aware of. So here I can see this is lowercase, but to be safe, I'll just copy it. So I might want to do some branching. So I'm going to disconnect this. And this is where you can start adding some conditional logic. So I might want to drag an if statement and say, if the result of this form is search, then we're going to do a buffer. Otherwise, we'll exit the workflow. So here, there's a little condition. I'm going to write a little expression in here and find my little search form. And in this scenario, I'm going to actually, get the result of it. So if the result of that is equal to search, then we're going to, do the buffer. Otherwise, we'll cancel. So if that is true, then we're going to connect it. If that is false, I'm just going to exit out of my workflow. And I'll click save. And let's rerun this. So now here, if I click cancel, it nicely exits. If I select a point on the map and buffer it, it does the buffer and then it exits. So let's now do a query. So you can see here, we're starting to, that's a lot of activities that are kind of getting added back to back. To clean up your workflow, there's something that's quite nice, and it's this container element. And this is where you can just kind of group activities together. So I can call this my buffer container, and I might want to, put all of this content into my buffer container. So I'll just cut this, click cut, and then now I can paste that in here. It's like a little sub workflow where you can use to kind of, nicely organize your workflow. Again, I'm trying to, help you out with kind of best practices and using containers to kind of make it a little bit easier, especially if you're sharing this workflow to other users within your organization. The more comments, and information you have, you can add some notes. There's a little notes panel as well. This is my searches for parcels by a buffer. The more information that you're able to provide, the easier it will be for other users, our support staff and so on as well to follow your workflow. So I'm happy with that. Let's now do a query. So let's query all of the parcels within that buffer. If I drag that query onto this, you can see the query layer has a bunch of inputs, okay? This resembles essentially the REST endpoint of the service. So if we were to go to this tax lots service and scroll down, you can see there's this query button. And this is where, these are all of the inputs that you can use to filter, your data. If you do 1 = 1, that's going to return everything. You might want to say where like the property, ID is like, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That will find a specific property ID. Obviously, based on the fields that you have here. So this, process is available in a workflow activity, okay? Again, just to show you, if I just did a 1 = 1, returned all of the fields, and then, result record count, I only want 10 features. You'll see here, it's doing a query against that, and it's only returning the first 10 features within your GIS data. So that's what the query layer activity does. And we're going to be filtering it by an input geometry, which will be our buffer. So to do so, there's a couple of ways you can do it. We can, let's go back, and we can copy the URL for our layer. And we can, here, if we scroll up, there's a URL as input. So I can paste that in. And then for my where clause, I don't really need a where clause because we're going to be passing an input geometry. So I'm going to do equals buffer, which is our buffer geometry, dot geometry. So that's going to take the output of this buffer, which is geometry, and we're going to filter our parcels by that buffer. If I want them to be, the geometry to be returned, so those parcels have geometry, I can set that to true. I want all the fields to be returned, I can, add a star. And if I want, to, I'm pretty happy with that. Okay. So let's go ahead and save this. I might want to call this my, query buffer or something like that. Query parcels by buffer. So let's save. Now it's not going to look like anything to the end user. And this is where we'll get into debugging workflow. So if I add a point here and click search, how do I know that that query actually worked? Well, this is where we get into debugging. So if I hit F12 or open up the more tools, developer tools, you'll see here, when you're in the administrative interface for Web AppBuilder and you run a workflow, it's going to be stepping through all of the activities. So here we can see my form initializes. Let's add a point. My buffer distance is 150 and my buffer unit is feet. If I click search, you can see a bunch of activities fired, and it kind of steps through the workflow. So we can see the output. Every activity for the most part will have kind of an input that gets fired. So it'll show any inputs that you pass. And then typically what you're going to want to use is the bottom one, which is showing the output inputs and the outputs. So we can see the output, once that form completed, we can see that here, we can see the result of it was search. The state, again, you can see our workflow product, using that kind of IntelliSense, we show you what properties are available, but this will kind of give you access to absolutely everything. So we can go into the state. I can see, here's my buffer unit. I can expand that, and I can see, the value of my buffer unit is feet. And you can see it follows, if you hover over it, it follows that same kind of process that we're using workflow for. So this is a really great way to kind of identify and see, is what you're actually, the user entering, is it actually getting filed correctly? And, is your query performing correctly and so on? It's a great way to actually debug your workflow. And additionally, in our IntelliSense, we don't show absolutely all of these properties. We'll show maybe like 5 or 6 of them. So if there's other properties that you want to, view, this is the best way to do so. I will also mention you should ensure that you've got verbose logging configured as well to kind of visualize these kind of elements that we're seeing here. So if we continue to scroll through, so yeah, we can see that that was 50. Our buffer distance was, if we go to value, there was this kind of numeric property, which was 150. And, we could continue going through there, but let's kind of cut through our workflow a little bit. We can see we've got our buffer activity that runs. The inputs is 150 feet, and the geometry, the point geometry from our form. And then the output of that is going to be a buffer geometry. This follows, Esri's kind of JavaScript objects. And then here we can see this is our query task at the end that we just ran. And we can see the inputs for it was our buffer geometry. We're getting all of the attributes, we're returning geometry, and this is our URL. And then the output, we can see there's 8 features. If we actually looked at here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Some of these might actually, probably there it got connected, and then there as well. So that would be 7, 8. And so here you can see there's, features, and then there's 8 of them. If we looked at, each feature, you can see there's, these are the attributes for them. And this is the, geometry associated with it. So again, I can't overemphasize how useful this console is for debugging your workflows, understanding how they work and what inputs you're feeding to an activity and what the outputs are. It's invaluable. And when you're doing any workflow development, always make sure you have this console available. So there we can see we've got some, we can see that we've returned some features. Let's maybe add them to an item picker or something like that. So let's go to our workflow here, and let's just add another form, display form. And I'll call this my parcel form, because we'll actually highlight the parcels on the map so that we can actually see them. And then let's double click this, and let's, I don't know, say selected parcels, and add an item picker, which is a very useful element because it'll automatically highlight those features on the map, assuming that there's some geometry associated with them. So here, let's there's this ArcGIS query option available. So that's a little template that it fires. So let's just use that. We've already done our query, so I'm actually going to go ahead and delete this. And here you can see this activity just requires some features as input. So if we search for our query buffer at a period and click on features, that's going to be the items that we want to pass to this item picker. And then this label will be an attribute that we want to include to symbolize it. So I might want to do, the property ID. And again, this is case sensitive, and it would have to match the, the field name here. So maybe I want to include the property ID. So let's go ahead and, save this. Again, as always, I like having my elements have an actual ID name. Let's just do no selection and click save. And if we were to then rerun this at a point and click search, we can see here, we're highlighting the parcels that intersected our buffer. Now we're going to, continue configuring this. I just want to again pause. Also, I need to grab a glass of water, but any questions, any input or anything, I'd like this to be interactive as possible. So please, are there any questions? Is this making sense? You'll have the recording, but as anyone who's maybe used our older workflow technology, who might want to chime in if they've never used this product before. Any comments or information would be great, just to see if people are following along or if this is making sense. So I'm just going to pause there for a moment while I can grab a glass of water. But yeah, any comments or anything like that would be great.
Hi, Patrick. This is Diego. I think it is good. It's a lot of information for for a workshop, but it is good information. It's without looking something to compare, sometimes it's hard to relate to a real user case, how we will be using or how others will be using it. But I think it is a good introduction. So I do know that we might have me and especially others that is in this training. We are using Geocortex a little bit, and we have playing with it. So I'm sure we have some questions that we can, and maybe we can bring up if others are okay and we have time, that it might help connecting what you are doing with a real case and a real situation.
Totally. Yeah. Again, we've got lots of different examples. So if there's a specific business case, or if curious, can it do this or that? I'm also happy to dive into those a little bit deeper as well.
I know sometimes that can take time. So if everybody else is okay with that, I mean, it's just an idea. Somebody has some cases to bring it up, but.
Yeah, like I'm totally good to answer some of those, and then we can dive back into this. This is a workshop designed for all of you, so I just want it to be valuable to the folks on the line, really. So, or we can save the last half hour of the workshop to questions. I'm very flexible, but if you have something in mind that you want to ask, feel free.
I think there is something. I think Jared just put something on the chat.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Let's see.
I think it's a lot of information.
Sure. Yeah. Jarek. Yeah, I can definitely show that how that would work. No problem. Yeah, I was planning on once we have these parcels selected, the next option here would be to run a report, and maybe we'll ask the user for the report title or something like that, and show how the user entered information can get passed to a report. Definitely can show that. Yeah.
Anyways, my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, thanks for just hearing someone helps for sure. But yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, so Jarek, I'll definitely touch on that. Anything else in particular anyone wants to touch on? All right, cool. All right, so yeah, maybe again, also happy if people want to do a little break or so, we can always stop for a break, but or we can just keep going through. So I'm pretty flexible as well. Yeah, I think so. What we'll do next is we'll show how to kind of maybe take these parcels, connect it to our report, and then from there we can show other how you would actually cancel out of this, how to actually make these dynamic forms if we have time. But ultimately, I think it might be more valuable if we open things up, and if you have other questions, can it do this, can it do that, definitely can show how that works. All right, so, and yeah, I understand this is probably information overload for a 4-hour workshop, but hence why you've got it recorded, you've got those sample workflows and reports, and our training is ultimately, if you want more guided step-by-step at a slower pace, would definitely recommend that as well. All right, so where are we in our little workflow here? We've got a little item picker that we've added, and what's nice again about this item picker is it will highlight those parcels or assets that you search for on the map. So we might want another option here to then generate a report based on those. So yeah, let's maybe do that, because that was an ask. So I'm gonna change the value of this to report, and we'll ask the user to generate a report based on the parcels that they selected for or searched for. to also make this, right now it's just showing the property ID. So if we wanted to make it look a little bit nicer, we can also write a little expression here, and I'm just going to make things bold and say, parcel ID, and add a, another underscore. And then anything when you're using the item picker, anything that is a field, you can wrap it in curly braces, and that will get replaced at runtime. So now when we do this, and if I click save, we should see, let's rerun this and select our point on the map and click search. It's now, nicely bolded, telling us that these are our selected parcels. And then let's maybe ask the user for the title for a report, right? That's something that we can use as input. So let's add a little, or it could be the email or something like that. But let's say, title, insert report title. And let's call this report title. Yeah, pretty happy with that. We could make it required, so someone has to supply that in order to generate a report. So there, let's save that. And again, we'll do a similar thing. So if the user clicks report, we'll generate a report. So I'll drag a little if statement, and well, actually, I'll show you. Let's just add a back button as well. So we have 3 options. So let's add a little back button. Do back and make the value of that back. Add a little, arrow or something like that as a visual indicator. So if I wanted to now do some branching, so if they go back, we'll loop back to the start of the workflow. If they generate the report, we'll continue on and generate that report. Otherwise, we'll exit. I'm going to use a switch activity. So this switch activity is nice because it can handle a bunch of different branches. So the input for this is going to be our parcel form dot result, which will be, again, one of these 3 options. So back, report, or cancel. And then you can kind of define where you want those to get routed to. So I might want to have like another report, another form, just to display the report as a URL. And I can call this report. And then, let's loop this. Let's maybe move our notes to the top and, loop this back to the search form and specify this as back. This is case sensitive, so it does have to match whatever the values we entered in our report. And then here, we'll connect this to our exit and call this cancel. So if the user goes back, we'll go back there. If we go cancel, we'll go here, and if we generate the report, we'll create a report. All right, so then let's open up this report. I might want to provide a visual indicator to say, that the report is being generated. So this is where we can touch on events. So let's add a little text here. And I might want to say, on startup, we're going to ask the user to say that, it's going to say generating report, give them a little visual indicator. And then once it's done generating, we're going to replace this with the link to download the report. You can see here there's this events tab. I'm going to add a load event to this so that when the form loads on startup, it's going to have some logic to generate that report. And then once it's done generating, it'll overwrite this element. I'll call it report URL. So let's add a load event here. So this is like a little sub workflow within our workflow. So the first thing is I'm going to specify I have to get the object IDs from my buffer query. So here we can see there's a bunch of output fields. Our run report activity by default will run off object ID. So if I was to like add my run report activity here, you can see there's feature IDs, which are object IDs essentially that it needs as input. And a great way to get those is to do get feature set object IDs. That's an activity where I can pass in the features from my buffer query. So if I do query buffer dot features, by default, you shouldn't have to fill this out. But if your object ID is not, object ID, for example, if you're using like portal, it's sometimes lowercase object ID, or you might name it differently, then you will want to. I'll just, specify this even though it's not needed, object ID, because again, that matches this guy here. So this will then get all of the object IDs from our buffer query. So I'll call this, I don't know, parcel IDs. And then I'm going to pass those to our report. So I'll do equals parcel IDs dot IDs. So that'll be a list of the IDs available. And then this needs a URL. This is going to be the URL of your report item. So this is our draft report that we created. I'm going to go info and copy this. And let's go back into our workflow and paste that URL. So here we can see that's been pasted. And then let's, I'll touch on the parameters in a moment here, but let's first just keep that as is. And then the last step is once this report generates, it's going to create like a URL that the user can download the PDF. I want to set this, like replace generating a report with that URL. So to do so, I can use an activity called set form element property and overwrite the description of my element with, again, this is going to use Markdown to actually render it as a hyperlink, but in short, anything in kind of square brackets will be what you want to present the user with like a clickable link. And then anything in parentheses will be the URL. So I'll just connect this to my run report href, which will be a URL, and then just close this with my parentheses there. So yeah, that looks good. That'll render this as a clickable link that says download parcels report. So if I click OK and save this, let's go back and rerun this. Click search. I can give this a title, but I haven't connected it yet to my report, but we could just call this Patrick's report and click generate report. And so here we can see there is an error. So it's saying unable to get portal item. So we're passing in some feature IDs, but the URL is there. It might be a session issue. So let me just make sure I share this, report with, my users. So one sec, let's just share this. Let's just share it with everyone and then try to rerun that again. So yeah, GIS Colorado draft report. Again, hence why the console is nice in case you're, for debugging your stuff. I can see I'm passing, these are the object IDs that I'm passing. Those are really long object IDs, and then it's connected to that portal item, which should be what we want. So let's just try to regenerate this. And there we go. So now it's generating the report. And then now that I've shared it, and then we should see, once it's done generating, we'll see a little, download parcels report link. And you can see here in the console, you can see that it's kind of running and chugging along. You can see what the inputs for that activity are. So that was our URL, and these are the feature IDs that we're passing. And then it should, in I don't know, a few seconds here, give us a URL that the user can download. Should be pretty quick here, but it seems like it's taking its time. Huh. There we go. Let's open it up. And here, we've got a parcel report. So this is highlighting all of the parcels, on the map. We can see our page number and data being listed. And then here, maybe I want to adjust this title with whatever title the user enters. So to do so, let's go into our reporting product. And I'm going to change this, or what you have to first do is you have to go into here. And this is our data source, but here's our parameters. So when you use the layer report wizard template, it'll automatically create this feature IDs parameter, which is used to pass the object IDs to your report. But you can have as many parameters as you want. So I'm gonna, call this my, report title, give a little description, and it's a string, and I'm happy with that. So I've got a report title parameter, and then I'm going to click on my label here and set the text for this to be, if I go to, I think it's in fields, there's a parameter section, there's report title. I could also just search for, report title, and it'll find it. And that's our parameter that we're going to be passing from our workflow to our report. So we'll click OK, and then save that. Actually, one thing I'll also want to do is let's make sure our detail band is stuck together, so that I think I noticed in the report, you can see here, like there was this kind of, we didn't need, there's this like line that showed up at the bottom. I might want to make it so that if all of this content is, doesn't fit at the bottom of the page, to then just grab all of the content and move it on to the next page, so it's all nice and consistent, so and not overlapping. So to do that, you can just check on these like keep together options. So let's save that. And then the last step is in our workflow, I have to make sure I pass the report title to that. Let me just refresh this to make sure that got saved. I don't think it did. Something weird happened there. I have to redo that, darn. That's okay. I'll just rerun through this. So let's do report title. Happy with that. And then let's connect it to this guy. And that's nicely connected, and save this. Okay, that's now saved. And again, the last thing is let's use this keep together option. So that's back where we started. All right, so then let's go to our workflow. And you'll see here in the run report activity, there is this parameters tab. So you can add as many parameters as you want. And to do so, and this is kind of getting into like JSON/JavaScript stuff, but you can create kind of an object or some parameters that you want. And this would have to match the parameter in the report. So here it says report title, and I will get the title from my report form. Oh no, it was my parcel form, I think. Parcel form state dot report title dot value. And if you had multiple parameters, you would just add a comma, and then this would be like your other parameter. other param, and it could be whatever you want, but because we only have one parameter, there we go. We've got that listed. So this, it's important though that this guy matches the parameter that you've configured it here. So it looks like they do match, so that's good. So then let's click OK, save and rerun this. Point on the map, click search. We could call this GIS Colorado report and generate report. Actually, I'm gonna maybe select a smaller, let's just do 50-foot buffer. There, we've got 2 parcels. Click generate report. And then we can see, if we look at our run report activity, we can see there's some inputs. We've got our 2 feature IDs, and then we've got our parameters, and then this is our report title parameter, which is GIS Colorado report, and that should get replaced here. Now, the way I formatted it was, I didn't give that much space for this report title, but we could also decrease the font and so on to make it nicely fit. But where were we? Sorry, I'm hopping around here. We can see that got passed through. So let me just go back to the questions there in the chat. There we go, chat. So Jarek, did that answer your question? Was there a specific type of parameter that you're wanting to pass, or do additional branching inside of the reports? What was your particular use case that you were kind of wanting to highlight there? You're welcome to just paste it in the chat window, and or you can.
Yeah, I think I have my mic plugged in now.
Oh, great, nice.
Yeah, so the basically what I'm trying to pass is a integer parameter, and just have them enter in a 4-digit year, and then more might come later, like an email address or something along those lines. But the main one I was having issues with and just didn't know enough about it to get it to work was passing in a 4-digit year and then having that come into the run report portion of that as a and fill out that parameter that is in the report, because I have that all set up on the reporting side and I can test it out and it works fine. But getting the workflow down was what I was having troubles with. But I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with some of those. So I think I should be able to turn around and get that working.
Sure, no problem. And again, this draft workflow that we've put together, doesn't resemble exactly the final product. So happy to export this as a JSON and send that to you, so you have that as an example as well.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd appreciate that. That'd be great.
Yeah, no problem. Any other kind of things you've been struggling with, or questions that you might have on the workflow or the reporting side?
The reporting side I've gotten a decent handle on. Some of the more complex stuff is still a little bit of a question mark, but we have more training to come, so I can wait for those. But as far as the workflow, is really just the user parameters that I was trying to have them input and then get that into the report, and then getting the object IDs to pass along. I was kind of fumbling around with that as well, and I think I was just missing a few key pieces, which you've shown here on kind of how to get those object IDs and then pass them along. So I think I was just missing a few key steps, but not knowing enough, I just couldn't quite figure it out.
Yep, totally.
So yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Great. Again, we can spend hours and enhancing this workflow, and I'm happy to do so. But anyone else have any questions, or other areas they'd like to dive a little bit deeper into happy to go on some tangents as well, you know, based on some use cases that people might be trying to do. If anyone wants to chime in as well. I'm just curious also, I don't know, folks are getting antsy as well, like now might be a good time to do a quick little break before we dive in. I'm, again, happy to continue going. What are, I guess, the GIS Colorado folks, do you tend to do breaks at all or give folks breaks? Or again, I'm totally happy to keep pushing through. You know, I've got tons of content, so really it's up to what everyone else is kind of feeling here.
I don't think it'd be a bad idea if we took a 10-minute break.
Sure, yeah. All right, yeah, so maybe like, I don't know, around like, I guess it would be, your time would be 11:55, I think. Maybe come
Yeah,
back.
yeah, I'll take
Sure.
like a 12-minute break till like 5 minutes before the hour.
Sure, yeah, that sounds good. All right. Almost at the 5-minute mark here. Thanks for posting that question as well. Yeah, that's definitely something I can touch on. And for the folks who didn't see the question, it's maybe you could talk about or show us what thoughts you might have about adding reporting functionality to dashboards. Maybe it's possible in a new Esri release, or maybe using an embedded web app. Yeah, definitely a great question. One we do get a lot. So a lot of organizations are leveraging ArcGIS dashboards or operations dashboards, which provide a nice kind of dynamic view into your GIS data with charts and other functionality showing different indicators and so on, which is a live snapshot. But we still find organizations wanting a PDF report. So the question is it possible to integrate with ArcGIS dashboards? The short answer is not, at least easily at this time. And the reason is Esri has not made operations dashboard extensible like Web AppBuilder, in the sense that they haven't added an ability to add custom widgets for operations dashboard. If they do in a future release, then I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to add our little workflow widget or reporting widget into it. And then I guess another thing to consider is a lot of their development is going towards ArcGIS Experience Builder, where you might be able to include dashboards in a embedded Experience Builder app. And I think by the end of this year, our widgets, workflow and reporting should work in Experience Builder. Whether Experience Builder has the hooks available to pass content from a dashboard to a custom widget. I'm unsure if that's would be available yet, but it's possible in a future release of Experience Builder or Operations Dashboard. If they do make it extensible, you should be able to add our reports to it. Now that's just on like the kind of configurable, out of the box side of things. If you're looking for, additional customization or something like that, then, yes, I believe in the past we have done, more custom integrations with Operations Dashboard. Additionally, our reports can be called either from like an ArcGIS notebook or a Python script. So, again, if you have, development staff, you can work, use the reporting API and pass content from Operations Dashboard to the report. We do have, documentation on how to do that, but again, that might be a bit more costly and, more steps involved. And then I guess on the embedding side of things, yeah, there's with our I know with our like Geocortex web product, you can have it embedded into an application and have bidirectional functionality. So you could embed Geocortex web into your product, or which could run a Geocortex workflow that generates a report through Operations Dashboard, or vice versa. You could have a dashboard potentially embedded in web as well. So, I think there's options. It might be worth actually, spending a few minutes here just to explore Geocortex web, because there are some charting and pseudo kind of dashboard capabilities available within it. But I wouldn't say it's a full-on like replacement for Operations Dashboard or anything, but it might be something worth exploring as well. So maybe I'll quickly do that, and then I'm happy to keep this kind of last hour pretty ad hoc. We can again continue to manipulate our workflow, or any questions folks have, we can dive into that as well. I know it's getting around lunchtime for folks, so happy to still keep things valuable and informative. And we can always cut it short too if folks want. But yeah, so on the Geocortex web side of things, so yeah, let's maybe touch on that. So here we're in Web AppBuilder, and with Web AppBuilder, there's some out-of-the-box themes available. With workflow, you can extend it and add your custom tools, but still you might want to adjust the overall look and feel and functionality of it. And then that's where you may look into, a lot of our organizations are using Geocortex Essentials. The next generation of that is Geocortex Web, which is based on the 4.x JavaScript API. So with Web, you can access it from our SaaS environment. So like Web AppBuilder, works with ArcGIS Online and so on. So here, if we could launch, we could access it from our SaaS environment and log in with our ArcGIS Online account, or we can use it on premise. So I'm going to go ahead and just open it up on prem. Whoops, I think I might even have it here. There we go. It's that link right there. So this would be like kind of, with Web AppBuilder, there's some themes available. With Geocortex Web, it's the same kind of process. We have some out-of-the-box themes available. When you save an app, it's going to get stored as an item in ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. So here, if we were to click like, WebGIS default, we're now in the configuration interface of Web. I guess maybe before diving into the back end, I can show you a couple customer examples just so you're aware. So this is a Geocortex web application that the city of Portland developed. And here, they've got these kind of KPI cards that are dynamic, and as you pan in and out of the map, they're going to update. So here, as you zoom in and out, they're going to update, showing the different types of I guess construction projects, and I guess the status of them given this particular app. What's also so right there, you can create KPI cards that or charts that get updated as you kind of pan, zoom in and out of the map. You can have them refresh on an interval, or again, using our workflow tools. So here, they've created a workflow to do a little filter. So they can filter this data on the map using a workflow. So they've used our kind of our nice little section, collapsible section form element. And then here they've provided the user with the option to filter these assets from a variety of different options. But to simplify things, we'll just do it by the status. So maybe we're only interested in application and under review options. So we can uncheck some of these options. So right now, if I click apply filter, we'll not only filter the map, but we'll also filter the KPI card. So you can see here now that that process has just finished generating. Here we can see now we're only viewing applications as well, or construction statuses where the status is set to application and under review, and the KPI cards respect that. So that's a way you could kind of create pseudo dashboard-like functionality using Geocortex Web and have it still extensible in the sense that you can build your own filter and search workflows to extend these features. And additionally, I do think they've got some reports configured. They got a little search tool here, but I think also if you click on any one of these properties, it'll pull some attribute information for it, and then they've got this permit report, which I think it's like pulling data from a variety of different records and resources, and it'll build out a permit report. This is a customer example where they've got a bunch of attributes and so on. I think this is still in beta, so they're still kind of building this out. Some QR codes, and then if we scroll down through here, they've got some related data and records kind of being highlighted in here. So it's always good kind of seeing a, a customer example. And so there might be ways that you might be able to accomplish a, similar task using Geocortex Web. And then on the embedded side, again, I wanted to highlight this is a Geocortex Web application here as well. We've, this customer, I think these are ski hills near Ottawa, Canada. And what they've done is they've created a very simple web app that's embedded into their existing application, and we support hooks to have bidirectional communication. So if they update this and maybe they're only interested in the snowshoeing routes, then this is going to pan the map and show all of the snowshoeing layers. If they are interested in skiing, then it's going to update the map and display the skiing layers. And then similarly, if they're interested in selecting a particular ski route, this is all third party. We've got hooks, so when they click on this, it'll pass content to web and highlight the features in here. So there could be a similar approach if, again, operations dashboard or experience builder expose those hooks. We could get content like the object IDs of the features, and then here we're actually interacting with the map, but we could be kicking off a report to generate a report and present that to the user. So I definitely think there are ways. It just in this scenario, this was more of a integration with their kind of third party application. And then I guess in terms of like how you would actually go ahead and build this app, it's similar to Web AppBuilder. So this is the backend design experience, but what we're seeing here. So we've got a bunch of different templates available, and what this will do is it's going to just load up a default web map. Just close a few things here. And it will also load up a default web scene. So this is using Esri's 3.x JavaScript API. So you can see here, everything in this kind of yellow bounding box is a live preview of your app. So you can interact with it, you can select features, you can toggle between 2D and 3D if that's a requirement. And then additionally, there's other capabilities like we support, hover over, I think map tips as well. So here, if I didn't click anything, but if I just hover over a feature, it'll, retrieve the map tips and so on. And then really, you can start manipulating it quite rapidly. So it, again, like all of our products, they're designed to extend Esri, but also very tightly integrate with Esri. So, how you're, all the data that we're working with, the authentication into these apps, where they're being stored, is all done with either ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. So it's very nicely insulated. And then on the right here, these are all the individual components that would make up this application. If I wanted to adjust the map, the web map that we're referring to, I can select this. And here you can see this took me to my map component. So we're not interested in any 3D. Maybe I want to connect this to the web map that we've been using for the workshop. So let's select our GIS Colorado web map. And then this will pull in, new, it'll reference our web map in, Vancouver. So here, these are all the associated parcels and so on. That's available, and then we can further extend this. So you noticed here, I had this little search tool. So as you hover over different elements and so on, you can configure the it'll take you to the configuration for them. So there's this kind of I want to menu where you can add your own custom tools. Maybe I want to add the workflow that we built in Web AppBuilder to this application. So I'll just click, add menu item. These are some out of the box commands, but let's go to our workflows tab and select our draft workflow and click select. And then here, you know, if I click I want to, or let's actually change the look and feel of it. We can call this, you know, search parcels. Description might be, please search parcels by buffer. And give it a little icon. We've got a large library of icons, but let's just, I don't know, select that one. And then now when, you know, when you're interacting with the app, you can, you know, see there's the search parcels option. And that's going to launch our workflow, and we can, you know, add our little buffer onto the map if we wanted to, you know, buffer it by 150 feet. And, you know, that should return the list of parcels. And we can see this is running Esri's 4.x JavaScript API, but, you know, I haven't had to manipulate or change the workflow. You know, it's, you know, designed for the most part to, you know, minimal modification would be required to kind of, you know, start transferring these workflows. So, you know, again, we could give it a title, you know, Geocortex web report or something like that. And when I click generate report, this is going to process that. So that's just how easy, you know, how you can take your existing web app builder workflows and add them to Geocortex Web. And, you know, in the future, you know, you'll be able to do this with Experience Builder and so on as well. And then, you know, with web, there's other benefits and stuff. You know, you can easily change the look and feel. Like if I wanted this, you know, I want to menu to be, you know, located in a different location on my app, I can, you know, move it into the bottom right or put it into, you know, our context menus so that when you right click the map, you have this tool. And that's not really practical, but you can do that with any component, whether it's, you know, a search option, a button or anything like that. And then there we can see the report, you know, generated. And then, you know, you could further brand and stylize this, you know, this app as well. So there's a services tab where we support both a light theme and a dark theme as well. And, you know, maybe we want to make it green to match our element. And then in terms of moving other components around, like maybe we want this, you know, panel to be over on the right. You know, all of these components are in this kind of nested tree diagram. So you can, like here, we've got some columns. We've got this panel, which is on the left, and this rows, which includes our map, which is on the right. You can kind of click and drag these to, you know, move components around, and then you can add components on the fly. I don't want to spend too much time on this because, you know, this workshop's designed for Web AppBuilder, but, you know, if you have questions about this, you know, we can happy to spend, you know, longer showing you some of these tools, but I guess I'll just quickly show, you know, if I wanted to add like a base map picker or something like that to this list of tabs, you know, I could just click add component. We've got a whole laundry list of components that you can use. And then maybe I'm interested in this base map picker. I'm going to add it, you know, in between my home panel and my layers list. We can see that just got, you know, added, and we can use that to change the base map to, you know, something else. So anyways, yeah, that's kind of a little tangent on web, just because you were kind of the question was asking about, you know, dashboards and so on. But again, happy to show a little bit more about this. Happy to you know, dive into the workflow or the reporting side. You know, any other questions folks might have, you know, we've happy to touch on that. So I guess yeah, did that sort of answer your question? Just maybe pause there, see if you've got any other follow-up questions on that. Not seeing anything in the chat, but
Patrick, this is Diego. You mentioned earlier about the Experience Builder.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts about it? I know it is pretty new, and we have tried to use it a couple of times, but we couldn't come out with the right user case to use it. So how have you used it? What's just was curious about your thoughts or other
Yeah,
thoughts.
sure. Yeah. I haven't used it a ton yet, just because we're waiting for our products to kind of work inside of it. I have played around with it a little bit, and personally, I think it's a pretty excellent tool. It seems like it's kind of like a way to build custom sites almost to kind of guide your users, which can have a spatial component and tools available within it. So you do have a lot of flexibility in terms of the layout and so on of where you want to position things. I think it might be lacking in some of the GIS tools available, but again, it's early, so they're constantly adding new functionality. So what I'm really looking forward to is actually with Experience Builder, you can easily like embed an iframe into it. So I'm looking forward to putting together applications that use both Experience Builder and actually like embed Geocortex Web inside of Experience Builder and see if there's any bidirectional capabilities available with that. I think could be really neat. But yeah, to be honest, I haven't spent a ton of time leveraging it, but I think it's a cool tool that's worth exploring. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, any other Diego, is there anything else you'd like to dive into a little bit further on the web app builder side, workflow side? I didn't really touch on printing, so I'm happy to quickly show that for the folks. So yeah, with printing, it's very similar to reporting. So it's if you go to our printing designer, it's let me sign in. There we go. This is a rather than having to use like ArcMap to publish and design your print templates, it's like a web-based app. So we've got different templates you can use. You don't have to publish anything as like a geoprocessing task. And then really you can design and stylize your print templates, add branding to them and so on. Rather than being tied to a specific feature, it's more like, an actual map. So we support, 8.5 by 11 to like plotter size print templates. And it follows a similar development and look and feel to reporting. Just gonna upload a little logo to add some branding to this. Here's a little overview map control. So maybe you want to connect this to our imagery web map, and if I wanted to save this, call this my GIS Colorado print, click save. Be the same process to add this to Web App Builder. So if we go back to our Web App Builder app, go add my little print widget tool. So we've got our little Geocortex printing widget, and here is a sample print, but let's add our GIS Colorado one, and I don't know, 8.5 by 11. And if we click OK, what's also really nice about this is it'll give you a live preview as well, so you can actually like see the features. I don't really need that open. You can actually see the features that will be included in the print. So if I click to print here, because I have two templates, it's going to give me those options. I'm going to select this GIS Colorado one. And then here, I actually have an overview of the map. Because I'm using like the administrative interface of Web App Builder, it looks a bit weird here, but if I was to like, launch this, and let's maybe add a bit of markup just for fun. Let's just add a little buffer here. And close that and then generate our print. You can see here, I've got, a live preview. So I can say, this is, I can actually see everything that's going to be included in it. And I can call this, my GIS Colorado, I don't know, template or print created by Patrick Fingler. You can have like rotation as a parameter as well if you wanted. And when you click print, it'll, again, pass that content to your template. So again, you can stylize and brand this. And we actually do have this kind of smart filter component on the legend. So if you have more, several layers and those layers have different like symbology, it will, when that's toggled on, it will, identify all the features in the current extent and only retrieve the legend information based on the features that are in the given extent. So you don't have like those like massive long legends, it'll be very purposed based on the features that you see, which is kind of nice. Where were we? It should be finishing up here shortly. And so, yeah, that's kind of the printing product. Again, we do have, I think, a half a day or a 1 day course on it, but for the most part, it's fairly self-explanatory. It's pretty easy to get, up and running, and we've got a bunch of different, templates available that you can play around with. And then I guess in terms of like resources for learning more, I'll maybe point you to some resources. So if you go to our documentation for any of our products, so workflow, reporting, printing, for example, workflow, you'll see here there's many of them have tutorials. So if you click create your first workflow, it'll kind of give you step by step how to build out your workflow. There's, I think, a little hello world and so on, and just help get you started. But one thing I'd also highly recommend is checking out our tech tip videos. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to watch someone build something and rewatch that, pause and so on. And these are short, digestible, 5 minute, 2 to 10 minute long videos where myself and then actual developers at Geocortex will kind of walk you through how to build something. So like how to create cascading drop downs using workflow, or how to troubleshoot them, how to send an email using a workflow, or connect to a SQL Server database. So some are very technical and are a little bit deeper. Some are a little bit more high level and just showing you like a new feature that might have come to the product. And with all of our products, they do have a pretty rapid release cadence. So around every 2 months, we're coming out with a major release with new features and functionality. And then in between that, we might even provide maintenance releases as well. So if you're using the SaaS environment, you'll just get all of those automatically. If you're using the on-prem one, you can kind of choose and see where, define when you want to do an upgrade or not. But here, here's that FME one that I mentioned as well. So fantastic resource that we've gotten a lot of praise from our customers. They get a lot of use, and for every on our YouTube channel there, we've got playlists for each kind of product. So mailing labels and so on for the and then actually for you mentioned for the parameters one, I think I did create, it's either in the workflow section or in the reporting one, but there should be a tech tip video on actually passing parameters from a workflow. Actually, here it is. Yeah, how to run reports from a workflow using parameters. So that would be actually one that I would recommend watching as well. For the I think it was Jarek who had asked that question. And yeah, I know this has been a long session, information overload. I'm totally happy to stay on the line, answer questions, dive deeper into anything, but I also understand people might be getting a little bit hungry too, so we can also break for lunch as well. So yeah, if anyone has any questions or wants to dive deeper into anything, I will, I'll export this and send it to you. This is just our draft workflow. I wonder, can I upload a file in here into the chat? I don't think so. It looks like it's just Dropbox or Microsoft OneDrive. So I'll maybe just send, let me just upload that to, oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'll upload that to that SharePoint directory and that I pasted in the previous scenario, and then you should see it there. I'll just do that in a moment. And yeah, thanks everyone. Yeah, I hope you found it valuable. And again, happy to stay on the line and answer any other questions. All right. While I upload that draft.
There's one thing I'll add, Patrick, too. I think, you know, if anyone has questions, we can definitely, additional questions later down the road too, we can definitely share our contact info. I think once you do have our contact info, but we can definitely get the emails. I'll put my email in the chat right now, just in case folks have stuff afterwards they want to ask about.
And Jarek, I think it should now be there. So if you again go to that link that I pasted in the very beginning, there should be that draft workflow, which is there now. I just uploaded it.
Yep, see it in there. Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And I think GIS Colorado may or may not be passing the recording for this. But hopefully,
Yeah, GIS
that as well,
Colorado,
friends.
we have the recording here, so we will be uploading that, and we'll get information on how you can access this, how to have who attended.
Awesome.